TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Israel has entered into the 19th day of war since the Islamist terror groups from the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip massacred over 1,400, mostly civilians, in Israel's south. The United States confirms that Iran's regional proxies were behind the attacks against U.S. forces in both Syria and Iraq. Israel struck targets in Syria following mortar fire from Syrian territory toward Israel's northern communities. Israel has entered into the 19th day of war since the Islamist terror groups from the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip launched an onslaught on Israel's southern civilian communities, murdering over 1,400 mostly civilians and wounding thousands of others. IDF aircraft and artillery, in close cooperation with the ISA, continue to prepare the ground ahead of a looming ground offensive, conducting extensive strikes against Hamas and affiliated terror infrastructure throughout the Gaza Strip. With that being said, IDF Chief of General Staff Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi highlighted that the Israel Defense Forces are ready for the next stage.
צה"ל מוכן לתמרון.
The IDF is ready for ground operations and will take a decision together with the political echelon regarding the manner and timing of the next stage. We are conducting a war. At this stage, there are tactical and strategic factors that give us more time to improve and take advantage of every minute in order to be even more prepared.
While Jerusalem's war cabinet is said to be tentative to tactical and strategic considerations, with prospects of the ground invasion drawing in additional hostile actors under Iranian directives into the war, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant continues to meet with the troops on the front lines, during which he repeatedly highlights that the war will unyieldingly persist until Jerusalem's objectives are met.
The war just started. Unfortunately, there will also be prices. Be prepared the way you should be. Be prepared mentally, physically, and equipment. We will reach into the ground and will eliminate Hamas. Literally, otherwise we would not have existence here. This is a condition.
Meanwhile, on Israel's northern front, Hezbollah continues to mount border attacks against Israeli military targets and civilian communities, to which the IDF immediately responds with aerial and artillery strikes against Hezbollah targets, eliminating over 30 of the Iranian proxies' operatives who were sent to die at Tehran's directives. Nevertheless, ardent followers of Hezbollah continue to pledge their support for their leader, who is hiding in a subterranean bunker under densely populated civilian structures in Beirut.
All thanks to Allah, who has chosen one of us to be a martyr and made us a family of a martyr. Peace be upon our Prophet Muhammad. My children and I are all in the same line. Wherever Al-Sayed orders us to be, wherever we have to be, that is where we will be. My children and I chant to Al-Sayed, we are at your service, Nasrallah, at your service, Nasrallah.
It is important to know that Israel has ample proof of Iran's involvement in the preparation and execution of the murderous onslaught which Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and their Gaza affiliates abhorrently committed on October 7th.
Iran helped Hamas before the war directly, with training, supplying weapons, money, technological know-how. Even at these moments, Iranian aid to Hamas continues in intelligence and incitement on the networks, and encouragement all over the world, and incitement against the state of Israel. In the Middle East, where the couriers, the proxies, as they are called by Iran, operate from Iraq, Yemen, and Lebanon. The instructions come only from one place, from Iran. Those who destabilize the Middle East for the criminal actions of Hamas, ISIS, should not hide.
while perpetrating crimes against humanity, murdering fathers and raping mothers in front of their children, who were then handcuffed and mutilated or burned alive, among other savagery, all the while maintaining its leadership in bunkers underneath the Shifa hospital in Gaza and storing weaponry and launching pads in and around schools, hospitals, and kindergartens, among other civilian structures. Hamas satirically held a press conference in Beirut last night, urging the international community to hold Israel accountable to international law.
As a result of the crimes of the occupation and the genocidal war they are committing, we call on Arab and Islamic countries and the United Nations to do the following. First, we ask them to take political and moral responsibility and take concrete actions to end the aggression and crimes of the occupation and the massacres, the occupation, that have been committed against children and civilians, which violate all norms and international laws. You must open urgent, permanent humanitarian crossings, allowing enough fuel to reach hospitals, bakeries, and water pumps, and allowing food and medical supplies and medicines, letting those severely injured out to receive treatment, and allowing equipment to be brought in to remove the rubble of destroyed homes.
As Hamas is calling on the Arab and Muslim world to protect its terror enterprise in Gaza, there are ongoing discussions between Israel and the international community, including chiefly with the United States, regarding humanitarian aid aimed at sustaining the so-called uninvolved Palestinian population in the Hamas-dominated territory. It is important to highlight that while Israel generally agrees for food and water to enter southern Gaza, it is vehemently opposed to the entry of fuel, which serves Hamas and its terror affiliates to launch rockets toward Israel's populated areas, as well as its ground-controlled terror operations.
We have said, continue to say, that fuel is an important commodity for life and sustainment in Gaza for the Palestinian people that are still there. And we know that fuel is a precious commodity that's running out, and you need it for generators in hospitals. You need it to run the desalination pumps so that you can drink fresh water and not seawater. All of that is important. And so we're going to continue to work with partners in the region. We're going to continue to push for fuel to get in. Now, look, that said, I said this again yesterday, we certainly understand Israeli concerns about the possibility for Hamas to abscond with fuel and use it for their own purposes and not allow it to be used in hospitals and desalination plants. We understand that. That is a legitimate concern. No question about it.
דלק לא ייכנס לרצועת עזה. חמאס צריך את הדלק לתשתיות המבצעיות שלו. דלק שחמאס גנב מאונר"א, אפשר להחזיר אותו חזרה מחמאס לבתי החולים.
Meanwhile, the United Nations Security Council held an emergency session that focused on the war that followed the horrific massacre in southern Israel.
Where is the outrage? Where is the revulsion? Where is the rejection? Where is the explicit condemnation of these horrors? We must affirm the right of any nation to defend itself and to prevent such horror from repeating itself. No member of this council, no nation in this entire body could or would tolerate the slaughter of its people. Let's not forget that among the more than 1,400 people that Hamas killed on October 7 were citizens from more than 30 UN member states, including many of the members around this very table. The victims included at least 33 American citizens. Every one of us has a stake. Every one of us has a responsibility in defeating terrorism.
Secretary Blinken went on to highlight that the United States is working extensively to deter Iran, which is keen on broadening the conflict which Gaza's Palestinian terror groups forced upon Israel.
We're all determined to prevent this conflict from spreading. To that end, we call on all member states to send a firm, united message to any state or non-state actor that is considering opening another front in this conflict against Israel, or who may target Israel's partners, including the United States. Don't throw fuel on the fire. members of this council, and permanent members in particular, have a special responsibility to prevent this conflict from spreading. I look forward to continuing to work with my counterpart from the People's Republic of China to do precisely that when he visits Washington later this week. Let me say this before this council, and let me say what we've consistently said to Iranian officials through other channels. The United States does not seek conflict with Iran. We do not want this war to widen. But if Iran or its proxies attack U.S. personnel anywhere, make no mistake, we will defend our people, we will defend our security, swiftly and decisively.
While the majority of Arab and Islamic nations voiced their outrage of Israel's defensive war against the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates in Gaza, the majority of the civilized world relayed a clear message highlighting 3 points: Israel's right to self-defense, the need to act mindful of humanitarian considerations, and to do everything possible to avert the war from spiraling into a regional conflagration.
We must prevent this conflict, sparking conflict beyond Gaza and engulfing the wider region in war. The attacks by Hezbollah terrorists on Israel's northern border, raising tensions in the West Bank, and missiles and drones launched from Yemen, all warn of the conflagration that is possible. It is in the interest of Israeli and Palestinian civilians and all states in the region that this conflict does not spread further.
Israel has the right to defend itself while respecting international law, in particular international humanitarian law, and therefore to protect civilians. We're all aware as well that Hamas does not at all represent the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, where Hamas rules with terror. It is holding the population hostage. It just brings suffering because of the violence of the fighting and a terrible humanitarian crisis.
In light of the overwhelming call of the international community, the Security Council must use clear and unambiguous language to demand an immediate ceasefire. It must be pointed out that whatever the justification might be, if the fighting in Gaza is allowed to continue and escalate, the final outcome will not be a complete military victory for either side. Instead, the situation will very likely evolve into a catastrophe that consumes the entire region, completely dashing the prospects of the two-state solution and plunging the Palestinian and Israeli peoples into a perpetual vicious cycle of hatred and confrontation.
Every diplomatic effort must be made and all capabilities must be harnessed to achieve an immediate and sustainable ceasefire. The continuous escalation of Israel's bombing of the Gaza Strip confirms that any delay in ending this war means more casualties, further destruction. End the threat of the conflict spilling over into the region.
The threat of spillover into the region and beyond is very real. We have already seen skirmishes between Israel and Hezbollah, missiles and drones being shot down by the US Navy in the Red Sea, and bombing of Aleppo and Damascus airports. All too easily, the situation could erupt into a regional war that no one would benefit from. We must act now to prevent it.
Following the council session, Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen echoed remarks from his speech in which Jerusalem calls on nations that declaratively pursue high standards of values and morals to back Israel's war on terror.
After the 7th of October, the Black Saturday, with the biggest massacre in the last decades, we're under the Hamas attack. More than 1,400 people murdered. Babies, women, elderly people. We are also here to bring the voice of more than 220 people that kidnapped. Hamas is worse than ISIS, and like Chancellor Scholz says, they are the new Nazis. There is not two sides at this moment. There is only one side to support in front of the aggression of ISIS. Therefore, I decided to cancel my meeting with the Secretary General later on today, since we need a clear and loud voice in regards to what happened. We're here to say never again, and I would like to thank all the countries to come to support Israel, President Biden, Chancellor Scholz, President Macron, Prime Minister Meloni, and many others that understand that we are fighting for Israel, but we're also fighting for the entire free world.
Jerusalem's top diplomat went on to call upon Qatar, which alongside the Islamic Republic of Iran is a key backer of Hamas and its leadership, to immediately act to secure the release of all hostages.
I also ask Qatar, which is financed for more than 10 years, Hamas, which is giving a harbor to the leaders of Hamas, to work to release all the hostages. It's in your hand. You are responsible to them. Do it immediately.
It is interesting to know that the Iranian ambassador to the UN also addressed a world body, in which he utilized the global stage to spout the Ayatollah regime's customary words of blatant deceit.
Today, the U.S. Secretary of State once again attempts to wrongly place the blame on Iran. Iran categorically rejects these groundless allegations. Our commitment to the regional peace and stability remains unwavering. Iran aligned with the international community in endorsing the call for an immediate ceasefire and a cessation of Israeli relentless military aggression, as well as imperative to halt the forced displacement of over 1 million people from Gaza. The United States' unwavering support for the occupation and aggression has rendered it an active part of the problem. The U.S. has further exacerbated the conflict by overtly aligning itself with the aggressor at the expense of the innocent Palestinian population. The rapid provision of military and logistical support to the oppressive occupying regime thus made the U.S. complicit in the brutal massacre of innocent Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. Mr. President, it is regrettable that today at this chamber the United States, Canada, and certain Western states attempt to shift the blame from the wrongdoer to the victim. They equate the self-defense and right of self-determination of Palestinian people with terrorism, attempting to grant the occupying regime Israel an unjust right to self-defense.
While the Iranian diplomat voiced Tehran's narrative to the world, Pentagon Press Secretary Brigadier General Pat Ryder acknowledged during a Pentagon press briefing that Iranian proxies have attacked bases housing U.S. forces in both Iraq and Syria over a dozen times within a time span of 1 week.
What I can tell you right now, and again, we're still continuing to ensure that this accounts for everything, but between October 17th and the 24th, U.S. and coalition forces have been attacked at least 10 separate times in Iraq and 3 separate times in Syria via a mix of one-way attack drones and rockets. So again, those are the initial numbers. We're continuing to work to CENTCOM to ensure we get you the facts on these. We know that the groups conducting these attacks are supported by the IRGC and the Iranian regime. What we are seeing is the prospect for more significant escalation against U.S. forces and personnel across the region in the very near term, coming from Iranian proxy forces and ultimately from Iran. So by virtue of our announcement over the weekend, we are preparing for this escalation both in terms of defending our forces and responding decisively. And I just want to emphasize the point that I made earlier, which is that we always reserve the right to defend ourselves, and we will never hesitate to take action when needed to protect our forces and our interests overseas. As we announced this weekend, we are posturing additional forces in the region for two reasons. One, again, to bolster our broader regional deterrence efforts, and two, to send a clear message that we will protect our forces. We will always maintain the inherent right of self-defense. And if there is a response, should we choose to have one, we would do that at a time and place of our choosing. The forces that have been notified under prepare to deploy orders, to my knowledge, those forces have not been tasked to deploy at this point in time. I will say that separately, the deployment of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense Battery and the additional Patriot battalions that we announced this weekend, their deployment is underway. I'm not going to be able to go into numbers. I'm not going to be able to go into locations other than to say to an undisclosed location in the Middle East. Again, those forces are aimed at enhancing force protection for U.S. forces in the region. What I can tell you is that the THAAD battery is coming from Fort Bliss, Texas, and the Patriot battalions and batteries are coming from across Fort Liberty in North Carolina and Fort Sill in Oklahoma.
It is worth noting that mortar shells were fired from Syria toward Israel's northern communities overnight, to which the IDF initially responded with artillery and aerial fire. Subsequently, during two separate sorties, Israeli aircraft targeted Syrian military targets in the countryside of Daraa, along with reported strikes of the military section of Aleppo airport, to which Iran has repeatedly transferred weaponry earmarked for its war preparations versus Israel, the United States, and other partners and allies in the region. According to the Damascus-run Sana news agency, at least 8 Syrian troops were killed as a result. Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. I'd like to encourage you to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. Moreover, if you're blessed by our daily updates and would like to help us bear the costs of these productions, since TV7 Israel is 100% donation-based, please consider making a donation. You can do so by visiting our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. I'm Jonathan Essen, wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we'll see you during our upcoming TV7 Israel updates. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.